When a person wants to deal with procrastination, they really have to deal with three things. They have to overcome the inertia of just being in that place for so long. They have to break the habit, and then they have to heal the underlying issues. People procrastinate because their drive or impulse to delay is irrationally stronger than their drive to act. So there's something in the brain that puts instant gratification ahead of what is healthy. That's procrastination. So in the context of complex trauma, procrastination is part of the flight response. It's the way we deal with danger or stress by way of trying to avoid or escape. That's what procrastination is about. So in adult life, as our body the brain is perceiving extra stress, the brain tends to go to procrastination. I want to avoid. I want to numb. I want to escape this somehow because I don't think I can handle this extra stress. So it's very much part of complex trauma of the flight response. Let me just give you a couple examples. I remember in university I had a roommate who left every assignment to the very last night. He left studying for exams to the very last night. He would set out weeks ahead to begin working on assignments, to begin studying for exams, but would just always find excuses for not doing it that day. He'd put it off to the very last night, then he'd pull an all-nighter. I've had people who they've got letters from the government around their taxes, around outstanding bills, and they just can't open those letters because something in them prevents it. So they put it off, they put it in a drawer, they leave it, planning to open it one day, but not quite ever getting around to it. I've had clients who they've got years of income tax that they have not filed with the government. They just somehow can't get around to filling out their income tax at the beginning of the year. And so it's just a huge issue for them. They hate themselves for it. It's causing all kinds of problems in their life, but they can't get there. I've had people who were going bankrupt. Their job was not working. Their business was falling apart. They knew they needed to find another job. They knew they needed to find solutions, but they just couldn't get around to looking for a job, to getting a consultant, to asking for help. They were just paralyzed. And then many who plan to clean their house, they know their house is a mess, but every time they go to say, I'm going to clean my house this week, they just never get around to it. So what can come out of that is a bunch of different things. So the procrastinator pushes stuff off, delays it until crunch time. And basically they're in a crisis. It's the last minute, it's do or die. They got to get this done. They're panicking. And so what they begin to do is they start to do it, but they now want everybody else to come and help them. They now demand that other people come and get them through this crisis. And if people are unwilling to help out, they get angry at those people. If people aren't willing to make an exception for them and say, it's okay if you're late, it's okay if you do it next week, then they're angry at those people. If people set boundaries with them and said, I'm tired of you creating crises that are really unnecessary. It's because of your poor planning. It's because of your procrastination. I refuse to get involved in your unnecessary crisis. And they set a boundary. Then the person gets really angry at people. So now they're lashing out and hurting people around them, all because of their procrastination. Then what comes out of this is they then go after the fact to beating themselves up severely in their mind. So they see themselves as weak. They see themselves as lazy. They see themselves as someone who can't get their act together, someone who doesn't deserve respect. And they just put themselves down, beat themselves severely. But part of them thinks that that's going to help them get motivated to change, but it doesn't work. So what I hope you see is that a procrastinator really lives with a mixture of negative emotions. That's what begins to be their normal. So they live with fear, they live with guilt, They live with shame. They hate themselves. There's a war constantly within themselves that is exhausting. They want to do it. They know they should do it, but they don't do it. And there's just this ongoing war. Then they have this constant internal critic in their brain that's finding fault with them because of their procrastination, because of failure. There's constant chatter in their brain, noise in their brain, all the things they know they should be doing, all the excuses they're making. It's exhausting. It's negative. It's discouraging. It's depressing. It's demotivating. But that's what begins to happen in the internal world, the brain and the emotions of a procrastinator. So as we've done, I want to give you a test this week, but instead of 10 questions, I want to give you 20 questions. And so mark 1 if it's completely untrue of you, 2 if it's mostly untrue, 3 if it's slightly more true than untrue, 4 if it's moderately true, 5 if it's mostly true, and 6 if it describes you perfectly. And we say that each time that if you have any 5s or 6s, even though you might have a low score overall, it should cause you to go, maybe there's something here I need to look at. So number 1, I often delay starting important tasks. 2, it's hard for me to stick to a schedule. 3, I delay tasks because I worry about failure. 4, I postpone decisions because I often feel paralyzed. 5, I wait until the last minute to complete a task. 6, I struggle to start unenjoyable tasks. 7, I rarely waste time on non-essential activities. 8, I often feel unproductive. 9, I struggle to ask for help on tasks that are very challenging for me. 10, I tell myself that I will do it later, but end up not doing it at all. 11, I struggle with staying focused for extended periods of time. 12, I feel anxious when faced with imminent deadlines. 13, I delay tasks because attaining my high standards is tough. 14, I have many incomplete tasks because I have many other things I want to do. 15, I get distracted when I should keep working. 16, I prioritize short-term pleasure over long-term goals. 17, I make excuses for avoiding starting a project. 18, starting a new task can be enjoyable. 19, I have to be in the right mood to work on tasks. And 20, even external pressure may not motivate me to get started. So 20 to 29 probably doesn't apply to you. 40 to 59 may apply to you occasionally. 60 to 79, it's probably an issue for you. 80 to 99 is probably a significant life trap for you. And 100 to 120, it's probably one of your core life traps or core issues. Now, I want to just lay out how I want to approach this topic. Because many, when they approach this topic, I think approach it in ways that really don't work well for people with complex trauma. So many approach procrastination and just see it as a character flaw that they need to overcome. So what tools do I need to just get over this character flaw? And they're judging themselves. They're seeing it very negatively as a bad thing. And so they go to many therapists and self-help books. And the approach that is used often doesn't work with people from complex trauma. That's what I want you to understand. It gives a lot of helpful advice, but it doesn't produce lasting change for people from complex trauma because it doesn't get to the crux of the matter. So the focus is becoming motivated, getting organized, accountability, having a to-do list, increasing your self-discipline, rallying support for you, how to make good decisions, think positively. So it's really focused on that area of changing behaviors. And that usually doesn't work. And so it's really important, I think, to deal with this correctly is to understand that the brain actually developed the strategy of procrastination to protect a little child. It was their only tool available to protect this child from getting hurt. And so if you look at it as initially being not a flaw, but a thing that the brain was doing to try to protect the child. So instead of getting down on yourself for procrastinating and trying to resolve it by ramping up discipline and ramping up motivation, it's best to begin by understanding why the brain had to use procrastination to protect the child. And so we're going to approach it with compassion and curiosity, not with judgment, and we got to fix this flaw. Next thing I think it's important to understand is that if procrastination started as a way to protect the child, it became part of the subconscious brain. And now when it gets triggered, you're not even aware that it's being triggered often. It's happening in the subconscious brain, but it's also very intense because this was protecting a child from getting hurt. And so that creates intensity now when it's triggered. So you can slide into procrastination and there's an intensity, but you don't even know what's going on or truly why it's happening. So to get in touch with this part of the subconscious brain, it's often helpful for people to try to go back in their mind to the things the child experienced that caused them to start to procrastinate. What were the child's fears? What was the child's motivations? What was going on in the child's life? If we can approach it that way, often we can begin to bring true lasting change. So another way to say all of this is, for people from complex trauma, the place to start in healing procrastination is not top-down, motivational, discipline, organizational stuff, though that's going to be important down the road. The place to start is healing the inner child, healing the wounded child. That is key. So that's going to be our approach. Now, there's different ways to try to get kind of the picture of procrastination in your mind. And so we're going to look at it just from a couple different angles. So there's kind of three different types of procrastination. So the first would be the person that says, the least liked job I'm going to do last. The problem with that is they always find more enjoyable jobs to do, and so they never get around to doing that least liked job. They keep pushing it aside, but what is important to see is that they look like they're accomplishing lots of stuff in their life, but it's all more enjoyable tasks. They're procrastinating that important job that they don't want to do. And so they're still procrastinating. So pushing stuff to the last is one approach. Secondly, it's the person that knows they need to do an important job, but they immediately go to avoid by distractions. So let's do something else. Let's clean the house. Let's play a video game. Let's just watch a movie for a little while to relax. So they always have something else as a distraction or escape, and then they never get around to do it. Then the third type would be the person who knows they have to do a job. They obsess about it. They plan it to death. They make lists. They dream about it. They think about it. They beat themselves up that they're not getting around to it, but they never get around to it. They never get out of the starting gate. And so it's the person that plans it to death, but never accomplishes it. That leads to another way of looking at it, which some have called 6 types of procrastinators. Now, what we're going to see is there's all kinds of different reasons why people procrastinate. So that child who the brain developed procrastination as a way to protect them and keep them safe, there were all different types of possible reasons why that took place. So 6 different types would be, number 1, the worrier. So it's the person who doesn't have confidence in their own ability, and they're afraid they're not going to be able to do the job, and so they worry so much they keep putting it off. Secondly is the dreamer, the person that just loves to dream of all the things they want to do, but they never get down to the details. They never get down to taking step 1. They just love dreaming and saying, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. And then they procrastinate actually doing it. Then the perfectionist, the person that feels, unless I can do something perfectly, I'm not going to do it. And so they set this unattainable standard for themselves that they can never accomplish. They know they're going to basically fail, so they keep putting it off. Then there's the crisis maker. And that's the person who's addicted to the adrenaline rush. And so in their mind, I need to put everything off to the last minute. So then I get the adrenaline rush. There's a crisis. That's when I work best. That's when I get jobs done. Then there's the defier. And it's the person who just rebels against the rules. So I don't want anybody telling me what to do, when to do, how to do it. I'm going to do it my way, on my time. And so they're just procrastinate as a way of rebellion. And then there's the overcommitter, the person who procrastinates because they can't say no to anybody. And pretty soon they got too much on their plate that they can't begin to accomplish, so they keep having to procrastinate, put stuff off because they just don't have the time or energy to get to it because they're afraid to say no to anybody. They overcommit. One of the things that I think is important for people to think about is that some people, you'll see their procrastination most when it's doing tasks all on their own. Others, you see their procrastination most when it comes to doing stuff that involve people. And so as soon as it involves people, they just go into a void. So let's look into more detail as to why we procrastinate. Why did this child develop procrastination as a way to stay safe? So number one, for many children, they were given tasks, but nobody gave them the tools. Nobody explained to them how to accomplish that task. And so they just had all this responsibility put on them without the ability, without the tools, without the teaching, without the role modeling. And so they just kept putting tasks off. So lack of tools. With that, for many, was a fear of asking for help. So you're given a job, but if you ask for help, then you're going to get criticized. Then people are just going to say, no, do it yourself. And so there's a fear of being a burden, a fear of asking for help. And so you just then procrastinate. That then leads to, for many, they tried to do it, but then they failed because they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the support. And so failure became part of almost every task that they tried. They just never had any successes. And so now there's just this huge fear of failure because for them, when they failed, then they were teased, then they were criticized even more, then they were even punished. And so procrastination now is a way of trying to avoid what they think is going to be for certain failure. So what I want you to see is that for most people coming out of complex trauma, shame is a big part of procrastination. They feel not good enough. They feel they're going to fail anyways. They feel that they're a burden. They feel inadequate. They feel inferior. So don't try to accomplish anything. You're going to screw up. So shame is key in really dealing with procrastination. The next thing is that a limbic brain child is a child that only thinks of, I want to do what gives me pleasure now. I want to do what's fun now. I don't want to do what's boring. I don't want to do what's hard work. And so the limbic brain naturally likes procrastination, especially if it involves hard work or something that's routine and boring. So if a child is not helped to move from limbic brain to cortex, to begin to think about doing life in terms of what is healthy, thinking through long-term consequences, but they just continue to be dominated by their limbic brain, when they get to adult life, they're still going to be thinking of, I don't feel like doing this. I just wanted to do something that's fun, and not think through long-term consequences. So the whole predominant limbic brain, where a person's never grown into their cortex as an adult, can still trip them up and cause them to procrastinate. Some children procrastinated because it was the only way they got attention from their parents. So their parents were too busy, their parents never connected with them, their parents were always irritated with them, and so the only way they got their parents' full attention is when they put stuff off until there was a crisis. Then their parents gave them their full attention. And so to a child, bad attention is better than no attention. So I'd rather get this kind of attention even though it's negative. Others learn to rationalize that, and they often got this from their parents, that their parents procrastinated because they work better under pressure. And so if they left it to the last minute, then when they're under pressure, that's when they work the best. And so a child just learned to begin to rationalize to themselves, yeah, I'm just doing this because I work better under pressure, and that became an issue. Even though now, when they're under pressure, it causes extra stress that's messing them up, it's hurting their relationships, they still use that rationalization. I think for some children who weren't given tools, they begin to fear becoming a responsible adult, because a responsible adult has a lot of extra pressure on them. They can't just do what they want. They can't just live out of their limbic brain. And so a child sometimes begins to go, I'll just keep procrastinating because then nobody will expect me to grow up. Nobody will then set the standard and say, oh, they can fulfill that responsibility consistently. Now we'll require them to fulfill that responsibility consistently. Another thing that comes out of complex trauma is some children try to become invisible. If nobody sees me, if I never make any demands, if I never put myself out there, then I'll never get hurt. And so when they're given responsibilities, that means that they're going to be noticed. That means they're going to put themselves out there. And so for an invisible child, they will often procrastinate as a way to try to remain invisible, because taking on that responsibility is going to put them in the spotlight, and that could mean that they're going to get judged and hurt. We've already talked about perfectionism. Unless I can do it perfectly, I'm not going to even attempt it. So I'll procrastinate. Another characteristic of complex trauma is often children grow up in chaos. There's just bad things happening all the time. There's drama, there's danger, there's all kinds of noise going on, violence, fighting, tension. And so it's really, really hard for the child to concentrate long enough to complete a task, because their brain is darting around with all of the distractions, all the chaos that's going on. And so they can't be present long enough to complete the task. Then in the child's mind is, well, let's just do a bunch of mindless distractions that use up all the nervous energy I got because I can't get the job done that I need to do. And so procrastination comes out of that. Many people that grow up in that chaos, that becomes their normal. And so their nervous system actually, it needs a certain amount of drama and chaos to feel normal. If life is too quiet, if life is too structured, it feels boring. It feels kind of dead. And so now for people to sit down and do a task, even when they're in a place that's safe and quiet with no distractions, something now resists it because it feels boring. It feels too structured. It feels restrictive. And so they begin to go, I'm just kind of a spontaneous person. I need to do stuff when I feel like it, when it's exciting to me. I don't like routine and rigid structure. Another thing that can come out of complex trauma is the spoiled child. And they tend to become procrastinators in adult life because in childhood, if you put off doing something, somebody'd step in and do it for you. So if you procrastinated, well, that's a good way to get somebody else to do it for you. Or you were never required to do hard work. You were never required to be disciplined to do chores and a routine. You could do only what you felt like doing. You didn't have to do stuff you didn't feel like doing. And then if you didn't do stuff, there were no negative consequences. It was just, oh, okay, somebody else will take care of the consequences for you. And so many spoiled children turn out to be procrastinators. Another thing that comes out of complex trauma is this strong internal critic, which is connected to shame, connected to the parenting that you received as a child, where you're always finding fault with stuff. And so what happens is if you don't do the job, you get criticized. But if you put off doing the job, you get criticized. If you do the job, you get criticized. You're going to get criticized whether you procrastinate, whether you don't do it, whether you do it. There's criticism everywhere. And so for people that just have this powerful inner critic, it's a no-win for them. They're going to get criticism everywhere. So they just go, let's distract and let's try to have pleasure and shut up the inner critic because I'm going to get criticized even if I do the job. Next one, so many people growing up in complex trauma become emotionally and physically exhausted. They're just on guard all the time. They're using a ton of nervous energy because of the stress of their lives. They're not relaxing properly and getting into their parasympathetic nervous system. And so when it comes to think about doing a new job that they should do, they go, oh, I just can't, I'm too tired. That's legitimate, but it causes them to procrastinate. So that place of being overwhelmed and exhausted that they live in causes them to just put off as long as they can doing jobs. Another thing that comes out of complex trauma is the distractions become addictions. So it can be food, TV, drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, whatever. But what begins to happen is when you're faced with a job that needs to be done, your brain goes, I'd rather do my addiction. It delivers instant gratification. It takes me out of all this stress for a while. And so the addiction continually wins out. Another thing that comes out of complex trauma is depression. The brain just, life sucks, or the brain says, we're going to go to the parasympathetic, whether you like it or not. We're not going to continue in the sympathetic nervous system. And so we're going to start shutting down. And that will include depression. Well, what does depression do? It takes away all motivation. I don't feel like doing anything. Nothing gives me pleasure. And so people just start procrastinating because of that depression. Then we talked about the rebellion one. So procrastination for a child was a way to rebel against controlling parents, authoritarian parents who never heard them, who never listened to them, who never tried to understand them, who just demanded everything be their way. And so the child procrastinated as a subtle way of rebelling. Another thing that can begin to happen because of all the shame and the guilt that comes out of complex trauma is that people begin to believe they don't deserve a good life. And so procrastination is actually a way of subtly sabotaging themselves. So I should get this job done. I could get this job done. This job will lead to greater success, to greater health, to a good job, to better relationships. But their subconscious brain goes, you don't deserve that, so let's procrastinate as a way to sabotage. Some parents went beyond just spoiling their child. They did everything for their child for other reasons. And so the child just procrastinated, and then their parents took over and did it because they were just impatient. So if the child didn't learn how to mix the dough or put eggs in the batter, all of that properly the first time, was making too much of a mess, the parents just took over because they were so impatient. Or if the child didn't do it perfectly the first time, the parents took over because they were perfectionists. Or if the parents were all about image, then they would do everything for the child in a public setting so that they looked good. The child didn't have to learn or try to do it. Or if the parent was codependent with the child and they just wanted their child to be happy all the time and never struggle and never go through painful emotions, the parent jumped in and did everything for the child just so the child would be happy. So that then results in a child later on becoming great at procrastinating. One other thing is some children that come out of complex trauma end up with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And what we know about ADHD is that children with ADHD don't have a good concept or a sense of time. So they can go, you need to get something done today, and they can just play around thinking they got all kinds of time and burn up the whole day because they just don't have a good concept of time. And so they're procrastinating without even realizing they're procrastinating. One of the things that usually develops as a person begins procrastinating more and more is that they then have to develop kind of mental games to feel okay about it, to justify it to themselves. And so in the beginning, it might start out, oh yeah, I got lots of time. So they can make that excuse and put it off. But then they can go to, oh, I need the extra pressure of a deadline hanging over my head before I get the right headspace to do a job. They can develop all kinds of mental games. And so part of the procrastination and dealing with it is beginning to understand the lies we tell ourselves, the ways we justified it to try to relieve the guilt, to try to relieve the shame that we were feeling. Another thing that's important to understand is that when a person switches into procrastination mode, so they get a task, they know they need to do it, they think about it for a little bit, and then they start to avoid, they usually switch into victim mode. They usually switch into poor me, my life sucks, and they just feel like they're a victim of their circumstances. And there's a certain helplessness and hopelessness that goes with that. The next thing we need to understand about procrastination with the child is they initially did it to survive, but then it became a habit. And so now, even if they don't need to do it, the habit has been formed in the brain. And the longer one stays in a habit, it creates an inertia. It's kind of like setting cement. It just gets harder and harder to lift your foot out of. It keeps you stuck because you've been in it for so long. And so when a person wants to deal with procrastination, they really have to deal with three things. They have to overcome the inertia of just being in that place for so long. They have to break the habit, and then they have to heal the underlying issues. So important to see there's many facets to healing. So let's look at, how do I change this? Most have come to the point where they realize they hate it. It's causing all kinds of problems. They want to change it, but for some reason they keep falling back into it. It's a prison to them. So what I want you to realize, we really have to deal with it on two levels. You got to deal with practical stuff in the here and now, but you got to deal with that wounded child. Why did that brain develop procrastination as a way to protect that child? But before we get to that, let me start with two important things that you need to make a distinction between. Most only see procrastination in negative light, as something that is unhealthy. But I think there's actually two times in our life when procrastination presents itself as actually something healthy, something we need to pay attention to. So number one, if you are exhausted, if you've been pushing yourself too hard, if you have not been doing proper self-care, meeting your 12 needs in a healthy way, you're going to be burning yourself out. So now when you have a new responsibility, your brain is going to go, I can't do this. I don't have the energy to do this. I want to procrastinate. It is trying to send you a warning sign. It is trying to tell you you're overwhelmed, you're exhausted, you need to rest. You don't need to be thinking about more responsibilities. You need to be thinking about healthy self-care. And so if you're finding yourself wanting to procrastinate again, ask yourself, is this an unhealthy thing where I'm sliding into old behaviors for the wrong reasons, or is this actually my body sending me a healthy message saying you're exhausted, you need self-care? Second thing is that most of us, when we are faced with a new responsibility, sometimes it would be very unhealthy to just take on that responsibility right away without having thought it through carefully. We need to be able to give ourselves time, especially if it's a big responsibility, to go, okay, what steps would be involved to accomplish this? What resources would that require? Will I need to involve others? Do I have the time and the strength right now to do all of this stuff? Those are so important questions. So the danger for so many people who've been procrastinating is to think, okay, I just got to start a task right away, but they haven't thought it through. They get into the task, they realize, this is too much. I don't have the time or the energy, and then they quit. Then they beat themselves up for quitting. And so there's a healthy planning stage in most important decisions. That isn't procrastination. That's actually taking the necessary time to plan carefully. So let's look at dealing with the wounds from the past and the deep fears that those wounds have created as one aspect of healing procrastination. So think back, first of all, to your earliest memory you have of when you procrastinated. If you're able to connect to that memory, ask yourself what you were feeling as a child at that time, why your brain felt it needed to procrastinate. And usually you're going to find there was some fear. So find out what that fear was about. Was it a fear of punishment? Was it a fear of failure? Was it a fear of being rejected, laughed at? Look at what that fear was. What you can also do when you're there in that memory is just ask, are there any body sensations that I'm experiencing right now that might accompany that memory? Often people will feel something in their gut or their throat or their chest area. They'll have trouble breathing. They'll feel kind of an increase of heat in their face. Check out body sensations. Then go to, okay, what did that little child need at that time to help them face that fear? Did they just need encouragement? Did they need somebody to teach them? Did they need somebody to show them how to do it? Did they need to be able to do something and fail and not get criticized? What did that child need? Then comfort that child, assure that child, but then go, probably that's the fear I'm facing today. So get into your cortex and go, okay, what do I need to give myself today? Maybe I need to learn some tools here that I don't have. Maybe I need encouragement from somebody else. Maybe I need support from somebody else. Figure out, what do I need today? And there's no shame in that. There's no judgment in that. You are trying to give to yourself now the things that weren't given to you as a child. Now, you may initially need a mentor or a therapist to help you go through this process of understanding why procrastination was developed by your brain as a child to protect you, and to help you begin to know how to help that little child, which means helping yourself today. So don't be afraid to ask for a therapist or a mentor to help you with this. Let me go to practical tools for today. So you've brought healing to the little child, but now you got the bad habit to deal with. You got to overcome the inertia of years of doing it this way. What are some practical things you can do to help yourself break this procrastination behavior? Here's some of the things that help me. Break a big task down into little tasks. So if I got to get this big task done, that just feels overwhelming. So break it down into 50 little steps. I could do this today, that tomorrow, and over the period of a week, I'm going to get the task done. So break big tasks down into little tasks. Don't be afraid to reward yourself. If I accomplish this, then I am going to reward myself with something I really like. That's what we do for a child. If you do this, I'll take you out for ice cream. Rewards are okay. Our limbic brain still needs those along the way. And then don't necessarily just wait to the end or the completion of the project to give yourself a reward. It's okay to give yourself rewards along the way. Oh, I got these steps done. Let's have a reward. So we need that positive encouragement of rewards. And that doesn't mean I'm weak. That doesn't mean I'm a failure. That's just how we work. And it's okay to do it. Some people what they have to do is begin to learn to do the thing I least want to do first. So I'm not going to put it off and do more enjoyable tasks first and then never get around to that. I need to get what I least want to do done right off. Second, some people, if they're going to say, okay, I'm going to start this job, they need like a 10-minute, we call it 10-minute technique to warm up to the job, where they do little activities. They do some yoga, they listen to some music, they get themselves into a good headspace. And so allow yourself, if you need it, a 10-minute, 15-minute window to kind of get yourself into the mood. Some people, they need to change their environment. So I need to write this letter. I need to get this project done. I can't do it sitting in my office or sitting in my living room. I need to find a different place and change it up. And that often helps them get started. Another thing that people can do is to say, I am not going to start this task and stick at it for 3 hours until it's done. That's just too much for me. I'm going to break it into 30-minute windows, 30-minute blocks. And then it will be done, but I'm not going to overwhelm myself with the whole project. Some people find it helpful to just put it on the calendar. I am going to start this job at this time. Then they make themselves accountable to a friend, but having it, that start time on the calendar is so important for them. Another thing is I have asked myself, when am I most motivated to do hard work? And that's usually for me, and it's going to be different for everybody, but it's the earlier in the morning, the better. And often it's a certain day of the week or on the weekend when I am just kind of in my prime energy place. Okay, let's do the hardest jobs in my prime energy place. So learn that about yourself. Another thing that's so helpful for many people is to make to-do lists, but it's kind of to lists. What do I need to get done over the week? So what are my weekly responsibilities? How much free time do I have? And then based on that, I make a daily list. Okay, here's what I got done today. Here's where I can fit in this extra job. So those lists are very helpful for people. Another thing that can be so helpful is do it with a friend. If you're just finding it impossible to get motivated to do it on your own, ask a friend, would you come over and just help me as I do this project? Just be with me as I do this project. That can often provide some great motivation. Another thing, be accountable. Tell your friend, I'm going to be doing this job today. Check in with me tomorrow just to make sure I've done it. And that just provides a little bit of extra motivation. Play the tape to the end. Just get out of that limbic brain, which is procrastination, is I want to avoid. This is too much. I'm feeling stressed, overwhelmed. Get back to your cortex and go, if I don't do this, here's the consequences. If I force myself somehow, find a way to do it, I am going to be so thankful. It's going to be such a relief of stress. It's going to be way better feeling than instant gratification now, beating myself up later. So you have to learn what works for you. And so it's going to take some time to figure out kind of what helps me get jobs done properly. There's always going to be an element of, I got to get out of my limbic brain, get into my cortex, do this, even though I don't enjoy it, don't feel like it, but it's got to be done. And I'm going to do it anyways, regardless of what my limbic brain says. So I hope that helps you with procrastination stuff. So many of you struggle, you beat yourself up. Start with healing that wounded child, understanding why that child procrastinated. Deal with that and then learn some of the practical tools. Well, that's the end of another Friday night. Thank you again for being here. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a great weekend.